Thoughts are all over the place about this Auburn football team. What are proper expectations about this club in 2022?
Well, Zach, I actually just finished crushing some chicken farm, and I am freaking ready to rock and roll.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tiger, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. It's a Tuesday, so we're joined by Auburn message board legend Charlie 5 for a little Charlie Tuesday action. I thought this was interesting. A week ago, we talked about the over-under. Bet Online had Auburn at 5.5 wins on the season. Expectations, can they get over the hump? Can they take a step forward? All that stuff. And what you observed in the aftermath of that episode, I thought was very, very interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating as well. So I got essentially branded Negative Nancy for saying 6 wins is a I think is kind of what we're looking at. Maybe 6 but 6 was my number. You literally just said 7, like 7 wins was it.
I think I said 7 and 5. Yeah.
One more game. And you were like the beacon of positive light. You were the ray of sunshine,
right?
Pumped into the fan base. And my comment was, what have we become to where that is 7 and 5 is the most positive thing you can outcome. I mean, maybe we're just being
a lot of this happened in the Discord, some of it on Twitter, but a lot of it in the Locked On Auburn Discord.
Yeah.
If you want to join that, click the link down below in the episode description. But in that episode, when we were going through the schedule of possible wins, how do you get to 7? How do you get to 6 to hit the over for Bet Online? And it's like the beacon of positivity in that same statement. It was like, no chance against Georgia, no chance against Bama, probably don't have a chance against A&M at home. And then, but the response is, thank you. Thank you for being positive.
Yeah. And I got
7 and 5, and people are like, thank you. Thank you so much.
Now I'm going to try to give those people a little bit of credit. Okay. This roster, specifically on offense, and then really the 2.5 to 3 deep on defense and beyond offense too, has been so poorly mismanaged for the previous regime up until now. Like,
what does mismanaged mean? Tell me what that means.
For example, the offensive line, wide receivers, they were talking about in the Discord. I can't remember the class. I guess it was the class from 3 years ago, wide receiver class. You had J.J. Evans, Kobe Hudson. There's a couple other on paper very good receivers, and none of them either haven't contributed or are not here anymore. Just so many miss after miss after miss. And then on the offensive line, bless their heart, that was
a 2020 class: Kobe Hudson, J.J. Evans, Elijah Canyon, Zevion Capers, and Malcolm Johnson Jr.
There you go. So you just have and those guys, they're going to be they're in their 4th year. Those guys should be in their 4th year. So those guys are your upperclassmen. And there were so many misses from 18, 19, 20.
Let's go over some more offensive players in this class just real quick. Tight ends, JJ Pegues, no longer on the roster.
See ya.
Also changed positions. I don't know what position he is at Ole Miss. Brandon Frazier, heard good things out of spring, but has not played a relevant snap yet. Tank, he's pretty good.
Yeah, he's decent.
The quarterback in that class was Shael Garnett.
Wow.
I don't even know where he is. Where did he transfer to?
No clue.
Avery Jernigan, your offensive lineman, Avery Jernigan, Tate Johnson, Killian Zaire, Jeremiah Wright, and Brendan Coffey. So some of those guys seem to be given an opportunity to take that step this year, but we haven't seen anything from them yet.
For 3 seasons. I mean, this is going into if that was the 20 class, so you had the 2020 year, 2021 year, 2020, and then this will be the 22. So they're going into their 3rd year. I'm not blaming. Understand this. When I say what I'm saying, I'm not dumping on Bryan Harsin. Like, there's not a ton he could have done to correct this roster between last year and this year. Right. Could we have had a little bit more help through the portal back in December? Yes. Sure. And maybe we underestimated some things there. But after that, like, you're not going to find like guys to just really improve this roster that jumped in the portal in the spring. Like, let's just be honest. That's just not going to happen unless it's an anomaly.
Well, the Craig McDonald situation is an exception to the rule.
An exception to the rule, not the rule. You're absolutely right.
I love him so much already.
You do. And I like him too. That's the exception. But like, so when I say what I'm saying is because I've seen all these misses and how our depth chart lines up and the top end of the talent at those depth chart on that depth chart, especially on the offensive line and wide receiver. And it's like, man, like I'm trying to be positive, but like where is it? Where does it come from? And could there be this giant leap from like the dudes that stayed and bought in and are developed? That absolutely could happen because we've seen Bryan Harsin take dudes that are not just like supremely talented and develop them into NFL players and beat better teams. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. Just what I've seen over my years of being a football fan in the SEC, it could be one of the least talented offensive rosters from top to bottom, like 1 and 2 deep, that I've possibly ever seen in Auburn.
Yeah, like I like the top 5 players probably, and I haven't really sat down and thought about this, but like I like the upside of Tank. I like the upside of Jarquez. I like the upside of Shanker and Landon King. Like, you know, these guys that have raw ability. I like the upside of Malcolm Johnson Jr. a ton.
Yes, me too.
And Javarius Johnson a ton. But that's when it starts to slow down a little bit. And like, you know, Keandre Jones is probably a top 5 offensive player this year. Like, I think he's going to be really, really good. But
like,
after 8 or 9, like after about 8 or 9 offensive players, it's like, man,
what if Keandre Jones gets hurt? Like, what if Keandre Jones gets hurt? Like, that's the thing. Like,
that's not the craziest thing in the world to ask.
Exactly. Like, we have talented dudes, but like, there's just not a lot of them. You know what I mean? So like, if one of them goes down or one of them doesn't pan out, like there's just not a whole lot there. Most of our big time rivals, where one doesn't succeed, they just put in another one, like, and go. And like, we don't necessarily have that luxury. And I don't know. That's just where I'm at. It's sad that Auburn, who is probably a top 15, maybe arguably top 12 program of all time, like we're talking, and 7-5 was the positive conversation, was the big thank you for being so positive. That's where that came from. And I don't know, that just kind of shook me.
Yeah, the fans that feel that way, we'll talk about the second in just a second, but like, is that perspective coming from how they view the program, or is that perspective coming from fans listening to national outlets and how they view the program? We'll talk about that in just a moment. Today's show is brought to you by BetOnline. And look, we already talked about it. If you think Auburn will win more than 5.5 games, you need to head over to BetOnline and check out all of their over-unders for all Power 5 schools regarding win totals for 2022. I had several of you message me after we talked about this a week ago saying, quickest $100 I've ever laid down on a line ever. And if you feel that way, go check it out at BetOnline. BetOnline is where the game starts. Charlie 5, I mean, I think that's an interesting question. Like, does the average Auburn fan view the program to where, okay, the current state of things is just make a bowl and everything's okay? Or do they just hear from everyone else like, man, Auburn stinks. Auburn's going to be really bad this year. And they're like, hey, 7-5, or, you know, it seems so much better than what a lot of these national pundits are predicting. I'll take it. Which one is it?
I mean,
I think it's the latter, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, I think honestly, it could be a little bit of both. I mean, that's the easy answer. It's just, I try to look at things realistically. And to me, based on where we were and where we are now, 7 to 8 wins would be a really good coaching job. And it's like, that stinks that's where we are, but that is the reality of where we are, because you have to build, like you can't just overnight you can't just overnight be like, okay, let's go. We want to be an 11, 12 win team next year. Well, hell, we're not a 7-win team. Like, we're going to have to take baby steps, and 7 wins, like, as the positive, I'm with you. I think there's guys that view it the right way, and there's people that are just tired of hearing certain negative things, so then they latch on to anything possibly positive, and then. But go ahead. Sorry.
Well, so how can it be both? And I think I know your answer to this. But when Gus was here, his last few seasons, and it was like 7-5, 7-5, 7-5, 8-4, 7-5, 7-5. The storyline around the program was Auburn is better than a 7-5 program.
Right.
And that's not the narrative anymore.
No, it's not.
The narrative is, if you can climb to 7-5, Coach Harsin's in contention for SEC Coach of the Year.
Right.
And once again, and where I think you're going to go with this isn't about Bryan Harsin. This is about the tail end of the Gus Malzahn era. But
right.
What are your thoughts there?
I mean, that's dead on. That's exactly that. And I want people to understand that, yes, I've been critical about some things of the, under the Harsin tenure, especially that revolved around recruiting.
The things that we were critical on, he has done a full 180 this offseason.
And what's funny is, like, the things that he was critical, like you just said, the things that we talked about, he's literally made a point to go fix. Like, you talk about the Tiger Trek or whatever they called it. We talked about how
ambush.
Maybe ambush, where he didn't necessarily see the value in going and seeing certain high school coaches. They just spent 2 weeks trying to go visit every single damn high school in Alabama. Like, they made it a priority. He's gone to so many different, like, laugh if you want to, gone to a ton of golf tournaments, doing a lot, all these alumni events, like all the things that we were critical on, he is addressing. So there was some validity there, clearly. Yeah. He's listening to the people that are there that have been telling him that this is a little bit different. You're a ball coach, but this is almost a political position, more than just as much as anything. And he's doing those things. So, understand that I see that those things are happening. And when I say stuff like the 6-6 or the 7-5, and that sounds bad, that is not a reflection of Bryan Harsin. That is a reflection of the reality of where this roster is, unfortunately, at this point in time. Now, we've already talked about development. We've already talked about how he can take less and do more with it. Maybe that happens. And I'm really rooting for it to happen.
So a second ago, you talked about baby steps, right? It's going to be a build. Yeah. And I've said this before. When Bryan Harsin was hired, we all knew this was going to be a build. And then a year later, the goalpost moved. But let's talk about some of these baby steps. What are some of these baby steps that he could take right now or over the next few months before the season starts, where it's like, okay, we're moving in the positive direction? The first is win recruiting battles on the offensive line, right? I mean, it seems like every offensive lineman that is north of 290 pounds, that is a 3 or 4 star, has an official visit scheduled in June. Like it seems like that's happening. And it's like, man, we only need 2 of them. Like I'd like more, but like if you get 2 offensive tackles, that is just so much better than what we're used to. So like, to me, that's the first very clear one that needs to happen.
I think that's the only thing. Call me crazy. I think that's the only thing. I said it from the beginning. I cared the last year's record. I cared 0 about the final record. I cared 0 about. I wanted to see how you address the needs that the holes that this roster has. Yeah. And one of my biggest, I guess, points of being a little bit upset, it was like, I just didn't feel like we necessarily filled our needs at offensive line. I didn't really feel like we filled our needs at wide receiver for immediate help, because even though it is a build with the transfer portal nowadays, I feel like I'm so excited to see what USC does. I kind of feel like that's going to be a quick turnaround. Sure. There's other teams that you really took advantage of the early transfer portal, and maybe the build process won't take as long for them. But
I think an example of that closer to home is Ole Miss.
Yeah,
like, they had one of their best seasons, and some of their fans say it was their best season ever last year. And Auburn beat them, and that was just a really weird thing that we all saw that Saturday night.
Actually.
Yeah, like I remember waiting to get picked up by the transit afterwards, and it's like the best thing about that is it wasn't fluky. Like we just lined up and beat them.
Beat their tail, yeah.
Right. And so, that's but I mean, if it seems like Kiffin's gotten a third of all the transfers in the SEC. It's been crazy. So what does that look like, as far as instant, an instant step in the right direction there? Because when you look at the sorry, Charlie 5, but when you look at the future of this team, you have the quarterback, I think.
Yeah.
Whether it's Gurner or, I think they're going to get Brock Glenn as well this year. So it's like, I think you have a path to really solid quarterback play after this season.
Yeah.
But you're losing your whole offensive line. And I don't think you want to start any quarterback with a bunch of, first year guys, but it seems like that's probably going to have to happen after this year.
Without just massive portal additions. You're right.
The future of the wide receiver position, I'm okay with. I'm really okay with it because all these guys that are on campus now will have experience this time next year. And so, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the tight end position, even though you're going to lose Shanker after this season.
Right.
The running back situation is going to be fine with Jarquez and Damari. I think that's going to be fine. Especially if you get Jeremiah Cobb. I mean, especially
Cobb.
That's great. You got a 1-2-3 punch. And then defense, they've kind of added some depth of the defensive fronts. I think they're going to be okay there too. I love the defensive back situation for the next 2 years. It's really just comes down to you need to find offensive linemen. And the thing that stinks about that is winning these recruiting battles over the summer doesn't fix that until 2024. And it's Bryan Harsin's got to get to 2024 first, right? So that to me is the biggest thing is while that is a baby step as far as, getting the ball rolling and getting some positive momentum in recruiting, it doesn't fix the issue at hand.
Exactly. But logical, if a logical person, like a logical fan, which that's almost an oxymoron, a logical fan. If
I don't want any of that around here.
If Coach Harsin can take this summer and start winning battles, I'm not talking about top fives. I'm not talking about top eights or top threes. I'm talking about if he can go ahead and start winning battles this summer, getting people in the boat. And I just feel like we're so close with so many guys. If you can just get them to pull the trigger, it could be a momentum thing and keep going. If you start to see that where we start winning recruiting battles early and in the summer, then you can say, okay, in a positions of need, not just continually just landing big time DBs and stuff like that. We got to start winning the money positions, the defensive linemen, the pass rushers, the wide receiver. You got to start winning those big money first round type positions that people invest a lot of money in. You got to start winning those. And if that starts happening, again, you can sort of look at the record with kid gloves. You know what I mean? Again, the record doesn't mean nearly as much as what's coming, in my opinion. Just the way I'm watching, just the way that I watch it.
All right, I want to discuss that because I agree with you. But what's the balance, right? What's the balance of, okay, the record doesn't matter. It's all about the build. It's all about the future. But you got to be around to see that. And so what does Harsin need to do that? All right, here on Locked On Auburn. Want to encourage folks to join the Locked On Auburn Discord, whether you're listening via audio or watching on YouTube. It'll be in the show notes or in the episode description down below if you're watching on YouTube. Charlie 5 is there. I'm there. All of the hosts are there. All of the guests, regular guests are in there. So great way to access us and ask questions and just kind of keep up to date with other Auburn fans. Encourage you all to do that. I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, there's got to be that balance, right? And that's that whole, you see it more in the NFL where it's that the battle between the GM and the head coach, where it's the head coach is trying to survive the next season. The GM's trying to win a Super Bowl in 3 or 4 seasons. And so it's a little bit, it's a little bit different of a give and a take there. But in college, in Harsin's situation, you're both. Yeah. And so how do you find that balance?
I think the balance is obviously recruiting, and then not so much as wins as it is what were the weaknesses that we saw and are they being fixed? Can we throw the ball downfield? Will we be able to throw the ball downfield? Will we be able to stretch the field? Did we do anything to be able to, however we possibly could to stretch the field? Are we going to be
the two biggest weaknesses, right, were downfield passing and just overall receiver play
and short yardage running the ball, like being able to just pound the ball, like hit.
And it's did those things get fixed on a personnel standpoint?
They may not have, but schematically, like you can do a lot of different things schematically to I guess supplement weaknesses. I mean, Gus did it early that made a living on being able to use misdirection and things like that until everybody kind of figured it out. That would help, mask some of the roster deficiencies.
And people quit putting 240-pound linebackers on the field. It's like, oh, dang it. They can actually run now.
And safeties that are not 230 pounds. Like people started using regular type DBs all over the place.
Yeah, guys are just as fast as the running backs, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But like, are we still going to like be running into a brick wall on second and short, third and short, fourth and short?
A lot of people approach this conversation with the assumption of like players don't get better from year to year, because they kind of didn't for a long time at Auburn. But we're kind of just assuming that player development is going to be better under Harsin. Obviously, you can't tell that in 1 year. But man, it's like if they chose to, invest in like, all right, Killian Zaire, like you're our dude. Like you really need to be good at left tackle or this offense thing isn't going to work. Coach Dye would tell me the stories about when he was when he was coaching under Bear Bryant. And he was like, man, Zach, they would spend a whole 2.5 hour practice to make one specific player just a little bit better. Like they would run the whole, like every scrimmage and every drill. And we're talking 11 on 11 stuff here. And like after every play, they would stop and coach one specific player.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like,
I can remember that from high school.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's all about the goal was to make one guy just a little bit better. I don't know what all is going on into that. And I'm sure efficiency, experts have gone in and kind of changed how practice is done because they're extremely efficient now. But the fact that it seems like they have invested in Killian Zaire to be a much better left tackle this season is pretty telling. I mean, it seems like he won the job in spring, which is not something we've really seen. Yeah, I can't wait to see it here.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just nailed every single bit of that. I mean, what are the weaknesses that we had last year? Do we still suffer from the same weaknesses? Not necessarily from like a personnel standpoint, because like we're still going to suffer there. But like schematically, are we just doing the same stuff? Like, are we just going to continue to do the same exact things and we're going to get the same results? Are we going to have any of those Mississippi State style meltdown on defense? Like, are those type things remedied? Like, what schematically are we going to do to make sure that we don't necessarily have the exact same problems? Because with Gus, it was literally year by year by year, you had the exact same problem from 2015 till he was let go, minus the Jarrett Stidham and Kerryon Johnson going nuts in 2017. Right. It was the same thing every year. You either could run it good, you couldn't throw it. And when you got to play the tough teams, you couldn't move the ball down the field. They just load up, stop the run. You couldn't do anything with it. So what are we going to do anything different to change that?
Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy to think about the 2017 season, because I remember sitting in the press box waiting for Gus to come talk to us after that game. And like in my adult life, I had never seen Auburn just line up and beat Alabama. I mean, even in 2010, like we had to we just dug ourselves up. We did in the second half, but like, that's not really what the storyline of the game was. In 13, I mean, even to tie it to get to the kick six, like we had to essentially find a loophole in the playbook and
a loophole in the system. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Which is still great. I mean, it's a rule and they executed it well, but just in my adult life, I just never had seen that before. And, Gus's messaging after that was, this is where this program's going. And it was really hard to not believe him, because it's just like, yeah, okay, I get it.
It wasn't much special. We just kind of
like we said it with the Ole Miss game this past year. Like, it wasn't fluky. And honestly, Auburn should have beaten them by more, but Jarrett Stidham just dropped snaps in the red zone all that year. He's done it with the Patriots too, and now he's with the Raiders. But it's just kind of crazy to think about what all has happened since then, since that post-game conversation. And it seemed like Auburn had all the momentum in the world, and we lost it.
It's like Gus after the Georgia game shook hands with Kirby and said, "See you in 2 weeks." Like, that's swag.
I mean,
like in 2017,
yeah.
we're at that point, and then it just kind of faltered from there. And there's so many different things you could place blame on it, but the bottom line is we just continue to lose battles recruiting at positions where you can't lose, and then we never changed anything to supplement that. It was the same old, and that's what I want to see Bryan Harsin do. I want to see him win battles, and then when you don't win and you are a little bit deficient in certain areas, how do you remedy it now that you had a year to see those dudes play? What do we do different? Do we throw it more? Do we play perimeter ball a little bit more? Whatever you got to do, that's what you got to do. And you can't just continue to do the same stuff, run off tackle, play action, throw it down the field. Maybe you complete it. More than likely you don't. Like, is it going to be the same type stuff, or is it going to be a little bit different?
Yeah, and give it a tank on 3rd and 2 or less.
Yes. Feed him.
I don't care if the other team knows. Do it.
Yeah, ride it until it bucks you. Seriously, give it a tank.
Yeah, no, I'm there with you, man. It's just crazy to think. We were so close. We had done the hard part. We have ascended, and then it's just since then it's just been kind of crazy, but
been tough. Auburn's still 5.5 wins at Bet Online. Go slap it up. Go slap that over. I told you, I'm being positive. I took the over. I do think we go over five wins. I think we get at least 6 wins. So,
you'll know if it's going to hit early or not. You'll know after that Penn State game if it's going to hit or not. You'll know.
Oh yeah. Easily. First 5 games. If we're 3-2 after the first 5, you just go ahead and cash out. It ain't happening. If we're 4-1, hey, we got a shot.
I feel pretty good.
Feel pretty good about it.
Yep. Charlie 5, how can people find you, hear you, all that good stuff, buddy?
Absolutely. Find me on Twitter, _Charlie_5, just like it says on the bottom. Monday, Wednesday, Friday on the Dad Bod Golf Pod, Auburn Live, message board, The Corner, and then the Locked On Auburn Discord.
Let's go. That is Auburn message board legend Charlie 5 hanging out with us as he does every Tuesday. On tomorrow's show, little War Report Wednesday, Mike G will come in and hang out with us on the show there. You can find my written work at auburndaily.com and follow me on socials at C Blackerby. We'll see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.